My name is Lisa Ng, and I work at CAAAV, Organizing Asian Communities.
What do you do as an intern at CAAAV?
There's a lot that I do as an intern. So I guess the core things are base building, which means going out and doing outreach, knocking on doors, letting our base or people that we organize know that we're there for them. We also provide, I also do we as a team, but I also specifically work with the Chinese tenants there. So that also means doing a lot of direct service work, which means translating documents, helping them out with anything that they might need. So if they need translation when they speak to someone from the management office on the phone, that's what I do. And we're also doing, we also do advocacy work. So there's a bill that's going to be presented today in City Council that talks about language access. So basically what happens in a lot of housing developments is that immigrants who don't speak English don't get the services that are, that don't get basic services provided to them just because they don't speak the language. There's a tenant who has been living in a public housing complex without heat for 5 years just because he didn't know how to communicate with the management office, right? So this bill says that there has to be on-site interpretation for the tenants who don't speak English. So that's basically the three main things that we do at CAAAV and what I do. On our team, we basically split it by language. So I work in the NYCHA organizing project, which is NYCHA stands for New York City Housing Authority, for those who don't know, the public housing complex in New York City, and it's split by team. So we have folks who work with Korean tenants, folks who work with Chinese tenants, and folks who work with Bengali tenants, and I work with the Chinese tenants because I speak Chinese. And this work is also immensely personal to me because I grew up in Queensbridge and I still live there, and Queensbridge is the largest public housing project in the United States. So this work is not only important to my family, intensely personal, but also important to the community that I grew up in. So, yeah.
So you started to touch on this, but maybe if you can expand more on why you think it's important as a young person to be involved in organizing and advocacy work, particularly in this political moment.
Simply put, I guess young people are the future, right? I always say this when I do youth organizing or when I talk to folks who are younger than I am, but I guess I'm a young person too because I'm 22. But I do think that the youth have the power to shape the future, and why wait until you're 18, or why wait until you're 21 or 25 or even 30 to do so, right? You can do it right now. And I think that's something that a lot of folks are seeing or realize. I think this is something that a lot of folks are realizing, which is really inspiring. It's really inspiring to see 14, 15-year-olds having conversations about patriarchy and capitalism and things like that, right? It's wow, what was I doing when I was 14, right? So that's a short answer, but I think at least when talking about at least when talking about Asian Americana, why it's important for me to get involved, I feel there are very few people who grew up the way I did. So I grew up in a majority Black community, being an Asian person, and of extremely lower class. My parents are immigrants who worked in garment factories, and now they're bus drivers. So we've always been of you can't even say middle class, or even work, just lower income folks. So I really think it's important to center people like my parents in the movement. And what I've noticed is that there are a lot of folks who don't come from the same background as I do, and there's nothing particularly wrong with that, but I do think that the folks who should be centered in the movements are the ones who have been the most disenfranchised. And that's why I feel it's important to me to get involved at least with my Asian folks, at least with organizing my communities. And however I may define my communities, either that's young Asian Americans or folks at Queensbridge. There are a lot of communities that I guess inhabit, and I'm still trying to figure out how to navigate organizing those communities and figuring out how those communities intersect.